Good morning and welcome to the programme 083 3333 975, our text and WhatsApp number. You can call Deise today 051 846 123. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram. You can email us. You can write us a letter. Another person wrote me a letter the other day. Firstly, we're going to go straight to Jack Power. Jack Power, good morning.
Good morning, David.
Thank you for joining us this morning, Jack. You are reporter with the Irish Times and you've also done extensive stories over the last year in particular about the Scouts and the Scouting movement in Ireland. What did you think of the Primetime programme last night?
Yeah, so last night I thought the Primetime programme was very powerful. The RT Investigates feature on the Scouts. I mean, I think what really hit home with a lot of people was in-depth personal interviews with survivors of abuse who'd been preyed on as children in the Scouts and really how that has affected them into their childhood, into their youth, and even to this day later in life.
Did it reveal, for people that haven't seen it, it spoke about a lot of different matters. It went into some specifics then. Was there any revelations in the programme last night?
Well, I suppose the programme really asked and posed the question, what level of cover-up or collusion had there been within these historic legacy scouting organisations, the Catholic Boy Scouts of Ireland and the Scout Association of Ireland, which later formed in 2003 to merge to form Scouting Ireland. It really posed the question, what extent was there cover-up in relation to this past abuse? Now, previously, the Irish Times had reported in the first report that an internal review in Scouting Ireland was pointing towards evidence of a cover-up. I suppose the RT Investigates programme drew heavily on a document that Scouting Ireland had sent to Catherine Zappone after the Irish Times had reported that, which was really trying to lay out the facts of the case to Zappone. The Irish Times also reported on that document in February. So I suppose a lot of the key documents in the programme were out before previously.
Yeah, you've put that out before.
What the programme really did well was it certainly did reveal historic allegations that were that have been made against some of the senior figures in those legacy organisations. So that was new and that was significant and powerful in terms of really getting across the fact that this abuse and the potential cover-up of this abuse was really occurring right at the highest levels of these former organisations.
Yeah, and credit where credit's due, Jack. It's a lot of it's down to you and the work that you've been doing. The Irish Times is supporting you in doing this, but a lot of the times, investigative work depends on individuals actually going out and doing the donkey work and doing the legwork. And fair play to you for all you've done in doing that. And sometimes,
I suppose well, fair play to Una Smith on.
Una's fabulous. Yeah, and the fact that she's pulled this.
Clearly, there was a lot of work done. On this program.
And pulled it together. And sometimes when you see it on the telly and it combines everything, it makes it. And the whole issue of the former Scout leader David O'Brien, he evaded justice for many years, and despite complaints about him in the 1980s. Unfortunately, I got a text from somebody last night. The modus operandi and what happened with abusers at certain stages in Irish society and how they were dealt with by whatever organisation may have been involved, it's not new. Like this idea of moving somebody on and moving a person to another area and moving him to different areas, it's horrible, the fact that in a way we're not surprised.
Yeah, I think that was really one of the harrowing kind of elements of when the programme went through several different victims, that there were such sickening similarities between a lot of the stories in terms of people being moved around, people being protected, even people trying to raise concern at the time, and that concern kind of either falling on deaf ears or being ignored.
And the Scouting Movement of Ireland and Scouting Association, Scouting Ireland, have said they're putting in place so much to do, and they're putting in place lots of different procedures, and a lot of these complaints are historical. So anybody who's involved in Scouting now, they're being assured and reassured constantly that all safeguarding measures are in place. And that said, though, there are potentially more cases due before the courts, and this may not go away for a considerable amount of time, Jack.
And I suppose considering the gravity of the Primetime program, the RT Investigates program, you probably could see a situation where people who potentially haven't come forward to date and watched the program last night, saw the victims speaking out, and potentially will get in touch today with either in Gadi Shakana, Tusler, to get in Ireland themselves and kind of pick up the phone and disclose abuse for the first time. So often significant events in the media like this have an effect of amplifying the amount of people we know about. And even in the Dáil yesterday, Leo Varadkar said the government is considering some form of potential state commission of investigation or statutory inquiry, I suppose, to really bottom out the key questions of what occurred, who knew what, and what was done at the time.
Jack, thanks for talking to us this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Jack Power there from the Irish Times, and as I said, credit where credit's due. He has done an awful lot of work on that, and well done to Primetime last night. They've done stuff over the years regarding abuse in different areas and different organisations, and as I say, anybody involved in scouting, and my own family are involved, and my daughter is going to Scouts. They've been constantly reassured constantly that all good, safe, child safeguarding protection measures are in place. We've been in touch with people in the southeast and in the Waterford area regarding scouting. We haven't had any response to them yet. I know there's a few people away. What do you think about it? Did you see the programme last night? Let us know what you think. 083 333 975. That's our text and WhatsApp number. Good morning, Damien, says Julie. Can you ask your listeners if they're having any problems with rats and mice in their homes on the Dunmore Road, and if they have any solutions? I'm petrified of them, says Julie. Julie, we haven't heard anything yet, but if anybody has any specific issues, let us know, please. You can call Audrey on 051 846 123. And we understand that the Chief Scouting Commissioner for Waterford will be willing to come and talk to us next week. And if people have any issues or any questions, let us know, please, and get in touch with us. Now, we are going to be talking to Kieran Kennedy about cycling, about motorists, and about the issues that we raised yesterday from our Dungarvan studio about the new laws with cyclists. What do you think about that? Jim Nolan is going to be coming in to talk about the death of Niall Tobin. Here's a little clip of Niall talking about Dublin fire.
And my own favourite Dublin joke, unquestionably, is not a joke at all, it's a true story, a true Dublin incident. Dublin, of course, being the very home of indignation. A Dublin man would rather be indignant than happy any day of the week. And the best example of this is the man who was cycling home for his lunch one day, and he was coming down past Tower Street Fire Brigade Station, and he saw men running around with hoses and shinning up and down ladders carrying out fire drills. So he got down off at the bike, and he looked on very approvingly at all this activity, until someone pulled a wrong lever, and a jet of water shot out of the hose, hit him in the chest, sent him spinning across the street, and left his bike in a tangled mass in the middle of the roadway. So he got up, wiped himself down, looked at the fireman and said, "Jesus, you wouldn't do it to me if I was on fire."
Now, keep your texts and comments coming in 083 333 975. We are going to be talking to Jim Nolan, as I said, and also to Leo Connor's dad, Noel. Jim Conroy is going to be coming on the programme. He's the local Dungarvan contractor. He's lost the contract for the Christmas lights after 29 years. We're going to be talking to Jim about what's behind this and how they feel about it. Also, Zerka Gibney Sheridan, one of the 3 young children heading up to the Youth Assembly on Climate Action, is coming in. People still texting in about the issues we covered yesterday with the IFA, also Sharon Doyle, the Waterford Food Bank, and we've got the 3 young men that were involved in the De La Salle fundraising. We featured them a number of months ago. They're looking at going to Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi I think it is, for the National Formula 1 Schools final. They're going to go to the World's final. One of the things we covered yesterday with Tom Cronin was antisocial behaviour. And on foot of that, Margaret, not her real name, contacted us regarding her experience of antisocial behaviour on a Waterford estate. I spoke to her a short while ago. Margaret, what's your own situation? You were in Ballybeg for a number of years, were you?
Yes. A year after we'd been there, a crowd across the road, I can't mention names, and it was lovely, but a certain crowd living quite near, they just gave us hell. They just seemed to pick on us for no reason, because we knew things that we weren't supposed to know. We saw things happening. Other than that, they completely terrorised us. My husband was beaten that day we were attacked. They all came into my gate, inside my gate, and they kneed my husband in the groin area many times. He was all bruised. My son went into the back of the shed. They followed him in. They hit him with a spanner. He had to be taken to hospital. They tried to stop the ambulance from going away. He never came back to his own house again. He only lived across the way from us. He was helping my husband was fixing a car. And my son never saw his house there again. He couldn't come back there again. We were terrorised all the way through. It went to court afterwards, and they got fined €300. €300.
And give me an example, Margaret. How did it start? How did the terror start?
I don't know. We were just minding our own business, so we thought. But they kept on throwing nappies into my garden and jeering at us. And, terrible. Terrible altogether. For no reason. They used to call me names. They used to call me Four Eyes and Chicken Legs. Anytime I go to the shop, and they walk behind me and walk back behind me again. Didn't touch me then. Didn't ever touch me then. But it was scary. I couldn't go to bingo because they were all waiting at the bus stop. I had to be escorted down by someone and waited for when I came back. It was just awful. And it just got worse from there on. It was just terrible. They broke all my windows. This was around 7:30 at night. They all came into the garden and they broke my windows, all my front windows. I had to board them up.
And you don't have to say where you're from now. You're living away. You're living in South Kilkenny, away from Ballybeg.
Now, and they don't know where I am, and I don't want to know where I am.
Of course, but
because I'm afraid they might attack me again. Because it was bad. We were living in fear. We couldn't let the dog out. We couldn't. There's no use pulling the curtains because I had no windows. They were boarded. We were afraid to put the telly on in case they knew we were there. We had excrement thrown at our front door. Stones. There was 101 stones inside my kitchen at 11:30 that night when we eventually got a chance to have a cup of tea. And we had to get all those stones off the cooker and everything before we had a cup of tea. And all my windows were broken. The day after, my husband was alive then. He boarded up the windows because they were open. They were gone. They were all gone. And we had to pay rent for the 2 weeks we were there after that. In a boarded up house. The rentman came for the rent. We had to pay 2 weeks' rent. We couldn't open our door. We were jeered. We had cups and saucers thrown at us. Nappies full. Everything. It was just terrible. We couldn't do anything. We had to get a taxi to town and taxi back. We were afraid when we come back we find the house on fire. Because there was a certain person coming up with a tank of petrol. He said, "This is for ye." And it was threatening all the time. Just terrible.
And what did the guards?
The guards, they didn't do that much. They took my statement and everything, but the same day they took my statement, one of the people put a counter complaint in saying that my husband dragged her mother around the garden. My husband's in pain and down on the ground in pain. He's been kneed in the groin by that person. My son was inside in the shed behind and he's fighting for his life. He got a bit of a spanner. There's a counter-complaint. They got fined €300 for that too, for the false complaint.
You did nothing to torment these people. They just picked on you. Is it because you were from? Was it because you weren't from the area?
I was a blow-in. Yes, I was a blow-in. Yes, I was a blow-in. And it was a lovely house. He loved it to pieces. It's the perfectly built house. He loved it. He said, "Oh, you put this house somewhere else." He often said that. "We're going to shift this house somewhere else," he says, "out of Ballybeg." I had an inspector came to the house afterwards, and would you believe it? What he said to me, "Would you like another house in Ballybeg?" I said, "No, I want to get out of Ballybeg." I mean, it was just so much. I hadn't a bit of peace there. I'm on antidepressants since that day. I've had a triple bypass since, and I want kidney. Life can be tough, but I was strong enough to fight it through, and there's a certain crowd there should have been evicted from the very start. She actually came out of her house over halfway to my house with a carving knife. She said, "This is for you. This is for you," she says.
And obviously, Margaret, there's an awful lot of people in Ballybeg that are good people.
Yes.
Did these people pick on others as well as you?
Well, the crowd that attacked me got others to join them. So I had them also against me because they were afraid to go against the first crowd. It's a case of you don't go against this crowd. It's a case of if you do, you're done for. They were afraid of them.
Could you sleep at night, or how did it affect you personally?
To sleep in our clothes and get ready to run out or whatever. We couldn't. No, we couldn't sleep properly because there's stones being thrown at all the times at the door, and sometimes they'd be outside the wall of my door. And if I open my door and I hear the sound, "We're watching you, we're watching you," it was just pure hell. We couldn't go out our own gate without being followed or cheered, and the whole load of them after us. It was just hell. I don't know how I survived it. My husband is dead now. He died in 2014.
How long did you stay there, Margaret?
I was there 3 years. 3 years. And I love being there because it's a beautiful estate. It's a shame that there are some bad people there because they're ruining it. They're ruining it. It was a lovely area. My husband always said it's beautifully built, lovely situated. It's just there's some wrong people there. And they're bad. Very, 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 very bad.
And you must miss your husband terribly, do you?
I do. I'm a widow since 2014. And yes, I do miss him. He was a great man.
And how's your...
What can I do? Life goes on.
Life goes on. How's your son now, and how are you now that you're out of that terror situation?
I feel safer. And I'm here now, and I like being where I am. It's lovely. I've got lots of friends around. It's lovely. But I don't want them to know where I am because I'd be afraid that they would come down and attack me again. They're bad people. I don't know how people can be so bad. I just don't understand it. I don't like being nasty. And I'm not nasty, but I can't understand why. It gets you nowhere. Absolutely nowhere.
And if there's anybody else out there suffering from antisocial behaviour, and you hear of people being tormented, what do you think?
I think it's awful. It's just terrible. I've seen these people actually spray houses with paint while the people are in the house. I've seen this happen. They're bad people. Why? Why are they so bad? What? I can't understand it. I just can't understand it. Why can't I leave people alone?
Margaret, mind yourself and take it easy, okay?
Well, I'm fine at the moment now, but the memory will never go away. Never, ever go away. No. My son died since, by the way. He died the same year my husband died. I had 2 deaths in the 1 year.
How did he die? Do you mind me asking?
Cancer. My husband had cancer also. My husband died in April and my son died in December. So I had 2 in the 1 year. I know. Well, you just have to be strong. Life goes on. You can't just give up. And I have that saying in my own mind. If you give up, you've got to start all over again. So I give up in the first place. So I can't give up.
Margaret,
I must be stronger than I thought I was.
Take care.
Right, thank you very much, Damien.
And that was Margaret, not her real name, talking to us about her experiences. And again, as I said, this is just her experiences. The vast majority of people in and around that area, as far as I know, and I do know this, really, very, very good people. So antisocial behaviour and how it affects people and how it can torment people, but then it can get a lot more serious than that. Let us know what you think, please. 083 33 33 975. Now, in a second, I'm going to be talking to Kieran Kennedy, driving instructor, regarding cyclists and motorists. And a text in, soon motorists won't be able to drive down the road. I've never heard such nonsense, these new laws. They will have bike lanes now. They have bike lanes now. They want half the road. Oh dear, oh dear. Margaret, it's very sad that Margaret couldn't enjoy living. It's so hard, and her husband has died in the same year. Bless her, says this person. Big shout out to Waterford's fantastic club kitman Michael Walsh being honoured at the Irish Volunteers and Sports Awards. And there's more on that. And a tweet in from one of the reporters in the Irish Times. Went to a news conference today. Irish Times editors discussed Trump's impeachment, a ceasefire at Gaza, a Colleagues Award nomination, and an announcement that they'd found a story about a dog that has been born with a tail on its face. Just one of those days. Journalism matters. Kieran Kennedy, good morning.
Good morning, David.
Thanks very much for talking to us this morning. How are you keeping yourself?
Great, wonderful, actually, wonderful.
Wonderful, isn't that a great way to be? I'll tell you, you are a driving instructor around Waterford. A lot of people would know you. We had a big reaction yesterday to our topic on cycling and the new cycling laws. In your experience, Kieran, how do motorists approach cyclists? Do they do it in the correct way, or what's your thoughts on the matter?
it's like everything in Ireland. Some do and some don't, Damien. I'll be perfectly honest with you. There are some cyclists that have no respect for motorists, and vice versa. You can only, when you're teaching when I'm teaching, I would put a lot of time into the unpredictability of cyclists. Because as we know, there are cycling groups and some very good cyclists and very safe cyclists lit up like Christmas trees. And then there are the other loo-balls who come off the footpath and onto the road and dress in black and whatever. So I would always tell learners to be extremely careful and cautious with cyclists. Now, there is no point in giving a learner driver or a full licensed driver a thing like stay 1.5 meters from a cyclist. It doesn't make sense to them. You have to give them something that they understand, like the doors of your car, or if he falls off his bike, will he go under the wheel, So a lot of the laws they brought in you can't implement them. You can't implement them. You know what I mean?
And that was one of the things. Yeah, we spoke with Tomas from the Dungarvan Cycling Club yesterday, and he was saying that this law is as much a deterrent as an enforcement vehicle because, sorry for the pun, because you won't be necessarily able to enforce it. But every law has to be, for a law to work, there has to be a level of enforcement that's applicable to the, I suppose, breaking of that law. And you don't think that that's going to apply in this case?
Well, I think they're going to find it very hard to implement it because, as I said, how do you handle a cyclist that's weaving in and out of the road? How do you handle a cyclist that's 3 abreast? It's very easy to handle a cyclist who has his reflector jacket on, his helmet on, his lights on. You can see him, you know where he is. Do you know what I mean? And of course you should keep a good distance from that cyclist. And a cyclist then, if a car is ahead of you turning left at a light, he's ahead of you. It doesn't mean that you can bomb up on the inside and kick the side of his car and say it's his fault. If you're ahead of him or if you take off before him at light, well, of course, you leave the cyclist off. But cyclists have to obey rules as well. Do you know what I mean? And there is the problem. I am continuously, and for many years have been on, back as far as Billy showed, about education for drivers, but cyclists are just as bad. I think you need an ambassador. Like we have an Olympic cyclist in Waterford, Kieran Power, and I know he's a very busy man, but maybe someone, a big figurehead like him, might head up the thing and get the thing going. And I'm not knocking these cyclist groups; they're marvellous, but like the driving, the word isn't getting out there, Damien.
Have you ever, or do you ever cycle yourself, Kieran?
I do cycle, Damien. I have a mountain bike now. I generally will cycle when I'm in like if I go off camping up in the Glen of Aherlow.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? In country roads. I do find it very dangerous, but what I find very dangerous up there is the cycling groups come along and they're brilliant people out training to cycle, but they're up in the wilderness up there in the mountains and there's no car ahead of them and no car behind them. I'm fearful that a lot of them will be blown out with one of the days and killed, you know what I mean? And that's all it takes. Is one car to come around the road fast on the wrong side and you could wipe out a clutter of them. Whereas I think groups of cyclists like that, it should be mandatory by law that they have someone up ahead with a flashing light and someone behind them. That's just one other.
Yeah, like I'm looking at Cycling Ireland's website, cyclingireland.ie, and we talk about the rules of the road, and the rules of the road do apply to cyclists. And one of the sections in point 4, it says, cyclists should never cycle more than 2 abreast on the public roads and should always be prepared to single out to facilitate the flow of traffic and other road users. In other words, to go 1 abreast. And yet, like Tomas would have said it yesterday, and I've spoken to other cyclists yesterday evening about this, sometimes they feel by cycling 2 abreast you're actually safer that way as a cyclist because the traffic will have to slow down and the motorist will have to actually take his or her time to overtake. It may delay them by a few seconds, but if there's only one cyclist going, I suppose, the motors might just go faster and could cause more hassle. So you can see the fear. Like a lot of cyclists are, as you say, they're decent people and they cycle well, but they're fearful of how motorists are approaching them.
I totally appreciate that, but I wouldn't be the daredevil cycling on the outside net, to be honest with you, because as I said, there are some notorious motorists as well. I can see their point there, but again, you see, if like people do listen to these shows, and I'll give an example in a second, but if you see a cyclist ahead and they're going to put you out in the way of oncoming, or they're going to put you under pressure, you indicate straight away, you slow down, or if you don't have to slow down, you move out early. You don't go in on top of the cyclist and swerve out around them, because they'll hear you coming and you'll frighten them. Do you know what I mean? So it's all about reaction and early reaction. And as I said, being seen, flashing lights, reacting early, these are the things we get to do. And you can't do that to a cyclist who goes in on the footpath, presses the button and then shoots across the lights. Do you know what I'm saying, Damien? But
yeah.
We had a brief discussion about this on Maria McCann during the weekend. I was leaving St. Paul's Boxing Club Monday night, and one of the lads came out, James Lagos, lit up like a Christmas tree. And I said, James, you're lit up well tonight. Said, my mother heard you on the radio. And, there it is getting out. You see what I mean? So the word, like, by these shows and all these good people making the point, it does bring the point across, and we need more and more and more of it, and we need to bring it to the schools, because that's where it has to start.
Yeah. I know some texters texting in 083 333 975. Damien, you are so right. That gentleman is so right. They're saying you're right. Stay behind him until the road is completely clear. Have fun holding up the guy behind in his car. Damien, as a motorist, I don't have a problem per se with the new cycling laws, but as a pedestrian, something needs to be done about cyclists on footpaths. Only yesterday evening I was nearly knocked down on the footpath at Grange Manor by a cyclist travelling on the path at speed, no lights, dressed in black. Bikes should have to carry a registration plate at the very minimum. Damien, why don't they bring in a new law for cyclists 3 abreast? I see it on the Tremore Road a lot. And another person, cyclists are a law unto themselves on the road. We live on roads that are impossible to pass on, and they are cycling 2 abreast, and you could be stuck behind them for ages. So there's a big dichotomy there in terms of the people's reaction so far, Kieran.
There is, and you see, if we're going about cycle lanes, to me, some of the cycle lanes, they're not cycle lanes, they're a white line taking up 3 or 4 foot of a road that they shouldn't be on, like the one between Benildus and Newtown. Roundabout. Are you telling me seriously, Damien, that if a bus and a lorry met on the cyclist side or side on any of that road there, that there wouldn't be mayhem? Do you know what I mean? Like, bike lanes should have room and have loads of room to put them down. Not just covering EU guidelines, but with the stick a bike lane there and we're covered under the thing. We have so many metres of bike lane in Waterford City. I mean, like, in Germany, if you're ever a tourist in Germany, the way the cyclists use the footpath is phenomenal. It's law you have to have a bell. And they can cycle on the footpath up to about 5 kilometres, and they ring their bell, and any pedestrian on the path then will just step in out of the way, and the cyclist will just go past safely. That's for areas where they don't deem it safe enough to cycle on the road, Damien. And I think that should be brought in here, because we have plenty of fine footpaths that we could accommodate both. Yeah. But like, not at full speed cycling now. You know what I mean? Just like pottering on, like on the way home.
There aren't enough cycle lanes though, Kieran. There aren't enough proper cycle lanes, are there?
No, absolutely.
They're not. There needs to be more.
Yeah, I live out by Oscars, Damien, and my youngest is 21 and my oldest is 35. I have never let anyone cycle to Elstall College, and that's going back now before it got dodged. I'd rather I just have never have. I've never been comfortable with it. The road is too dangerous. As kids, I never let them cycle to school. You know what I mean? It's just not safe enough around yet for cyclists,
Kieran, I'm going to let you go because we have some breaking news on the North Quays. Listen, thanks very much, Kieran.
Damien, could I just wish as President of the County Board, Keelan Cassidy and the very best in the senior elites tomorrow night in Dublin. It's a great achievement for a Waterford boxer, and the very best everyone savours from the County Board and St. Paul's Boxing Club. Thanks very much. And we wish him the very best. Kieran, thank you very much for talking to us. Bye now. Bye now. That's Kieran Kennedy there. We'll take more of your texts and comments in a second. Firstly, I'm going to go straight to David Cullinan, TD, because we have some breaking news on funding for the North Quays. David, good morning.
Good morning, Damien. How are you? Good.
You're just out of a meeting with Minister Owen Murphy. What is the news, please?
Well, I suppose the headline news is that the Minister has indicated that he will give the full support, the full funding for the North Quays development. And as you know, I suppose the bone of contention for some time was moving the train station. And the ask from the department was about €39 million. And as you know, there was a discussion between the Department of Transport and Owen Murphy's department. And we had sought and had got a meeting with the Secretary-General from the Department of Transport a number of weeks ago. And if you remember, there was some discussions around what they would fund or what they couldn't fund.
Yeah. And what have you been told now?
This morning. Well, Owen Murphy has said that his department will fund the full allocation, which is €39 million.
That's phenomenal.
I think it's great news. Damien, is great news for Waterford. Obviously, we've been pushing for this collectively for some time. I know Minister Halligan has been pushing this. The local Oireachtas members have been pushing it. And I just think it's great news for Waterford to get this over the line.
David, we'll have more in our news bulletins and later on in the programme. Listen, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Damien.
David Cullinan there, Sinn Féin TD, just out of that meeting with Owen Murphy. As you say, he's been told, the Oireachtas members have been told that the government is going to fully support and make full finance available for moving of the train station, which was one of the prerequisites or part of the plan that the developers have for the North Quays development. So we'll have more on that on the news at 11. Keep your texts and comments coming in. Damien, my wing mirror was taken off by a cyclist at the Cove Bar on the Dunmore Road. He just kept going. After that, I've lost respect for cyclists. And I myself am a cyclist, says this lady. Damien, a car can kill a cyclist can't kill a car. Now, keep your texts and comments coming in about cyclists. A lot of people talking about that. And the interview that we had with Margaret earlier on, Damien, such a sad story. No doubt their cancer may have been caused by the stress they went through. Love the programme. Thank you very much. Other people saying about the cyclists. We'll come back to that in a second. Firstly, we have Jim Nolan in studio. Good morning, Jim.
Morning, Damien. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you. Thanks for joining us this morning. Waterford playwright, and you do a bit of writing yourself as well.
I do, the odd bit.
The odd bit, yeah. You knew Niall Tobin personally?
I did. We walked the road together for a while. I'd met him a few times back in the 80s. Our paths crossed in the course of my work with Red Kettle. And I then, in the late 90s, wrote a play called The Salvage Shop, and Ben Barnes was hired to direct it for Red Kettle. And Ben had worked with Niall on a production of The Field. Niall had played the Bull McCabe in a great Abbey production, which I was fortunate to see. And so Ben knew him and approached him with the possibility in mind that he would read the play with the view to playing the leading role of Sylvie Tansey. And Niall took the play. I remember we posted it to him, and he was back to us a couple of hours after he would have got it, saying it was, I'm kind of blowing my own trumpet here, but it's to say, he said it was the best new play that he had ever read, and that he was going to be in it. He told us he was going to be in it. And subsequently then Liam Rellis and I, Liam was the general manager at Red Kettle, he and I were dispatched to the Westbury Hotel, I remember it very well, and
the best.
To meet Niall, yeah, and we ordered lunch for him, and I remember looking to Rellis and we saw the price of the lunches, and I said, we better hire this guy if we come back without him. I remember it was 30 quid for a lunch back in 1998. And
he nearly fell off
so
the chair.
3 of those would have been the best part of 100 quid.
€100, yeah. And we're going to play a couple of little clips of him now in a minute, but how would you describe Niall Tobin as a person first, as somebody I've interviewed him myself on the set of Ballykissangel. I saw him in your play and fabulous, but on a personal level, what type of a man was he? Well,
he certainly wouldn't thank me. He'd come back and haunt me if I told lies here and said that he was the sweetest man that I'd ever met. He wasn't. As anybody who knew him knew, he was a tough old bird, a hard man to please, a hard taskmaster in terms of what he demanded around him. And, by his own admission, he was fairly irascible. I was just leafing through an old interview he did at the time. In fact, he did an interview on just after the opening performance of the Salvage Shop, and it's an unusual time to do an interview or to ask someone, and that was another side of him. He knew what the business was, and he undertook to do that interview. But I was just leafing through it this morning, and the interviewer, Suzanne Power, I think it was for the Tribune possibly, described him. She said if he was a plant, he'd be a cactus, and if he was an animal, he'd be a grizzly bear. And she said both of them have wonderful qualities. But
he was contrary, all right. I remember that day interviewing him, and he'd give you a certain amount of time, and he'd, as you say, very straight down the line as well, and he knew what he wanted and knew how to get there.
Absolutely, and that's what I wanted to say as well. He, along with that sort of, he didn't take prisoners, but he was dead honest. He had fierce integrity. He knew what he wanted when I worked with him, and if we didn't deliver at our end, there'd be all hell to pay. But he loved that play, and he brought everything that he had to it, and was absolutely magical in it. And I was kind of lucky to spend a bit of time with him socially. If I could say, Damien, that he rehearsed with us in January. As you know, he'd been off the drink for many, many years, and he loved a game of golf, and we were determined to try and keep him occupied as best we could outside of his rehearsal time. And it was certainly the wettest January that I remember. All the golf courses in the county were closed, and so we had a lot of minding. And I remember bringing him, thinking this was a great idea. My mother loves to tell this story. She was involved with a group who played bowling. And Niall he was fiercely competitive, and so I persuaded him to come along and have a game of bowls with my mother and her friends. And that all turned out to be a great idea until he was losing, and it ended badly. But a great guy, and a wonderful, wonderful actor. He, as I said, anyone who saw that play will remember with such affection what he brought to it.
How did he fit into the dynamic of the director-actor relationship? Was he one of these actors that suggested stuff to you or said, this is how I'm doing it, or how did you get on with him as an actor?
Yeah, because there was Ben was the director, so I was in the room.
Yes.
Yeah, I was in the room as the writer, so I hadn't direct involvement with them, but because it was a new play, you were in it all of the rehearsals, and he encouraged that. Like a lot of directors don't like having writers in the room. You're brought in for a few days to fix any sort of glitches in the text, and then you're shagged off and invited back for the opening night, and I never bought into that. Like, as a director myself, I insist that writers are present. They're part of the process, and for most writers it's the most exciting part of the process, and Niall was very generous in allowing me to be there throughout the rehearsal period. And again, he'd if he didn't like a line, he'd tell you, and if unless you could defend it, you changed it. And on the other hand, I would say there are 2 or 3 of the best lines in that play belong to Niall Tobin. They were his suggestions, and they were incorporated. He was a brilliant comic, as you know. Apart from being a great actor, he had a particular nuance for comedy.
Yeah,
and some of he mined the laughs that were in the play, because it was a very dark piece, but lots of comedy in it, and he mined them and honed them. He was a great guy to work with.
He described the Waterford accent at one stage. Great on accents, and we're going to be doing a piece with a person from WIT after Christmas about this, but he described the Waterford accent as a grave insult and injury to the human mouth.
Wow. Well, he certainly was very fond of it.
He was.
I remember the very first
doing the
time.
Waterford accent.
Yeah, the first time I met him, I was on the board of Garter Lane, on the first board way back in 1984, and we invited Niall down to perform the opening ceremony on the original Garter Lane building. And Larry Fanning, who was a great friend of Niall's, it was Larry who the former manager of the Theatre Royal, was also chair of Garter Lane. He invited him down, and the first thing that Niall did when he came to speak at the opening on the steps of Garter Lane was do his impression of Larry, which Larry had the most beautiful Waterford accent. Niall loved that accent. And then came back to us. Caroline Senior, I was talking to earlier, was artistic director of Garter Lane 30 years later, and had the wonderful idea of inviting Niall to come back and sort of rechristen the place. And Niall spoke in 2014. And then the following year, Caroline and I accompanied Niall to the Opera House, or City Hall in Cork, where he was conferred with the Freedom of the City. And I thought he got a lot of honours in his day, but I thought that was the cap for him, to be honoured by his own and amongst his own.
You spoke about the comic genius. Here's Niall Tobin about the Kerry egg.
My favourite Kerry story, of course, is the teacher who had 2 little boys from the same family, 2 brothers, obviously, from the same family, in his class. And he was very puzzled by the fact that they never arrived in school together. One was always a few minutes later than the other. And one morning, this puzzled him, but one morning when one of them actually came a little late, he was the first to arrive, but he was still a bit late, and he said, "You're late. What kept you?" He said, "I was having my breakfast." "Oh, I see. Must have been a fine breakfast to keep you late for school. What did you have for your breakfast?" "I had a boiled egg." "Oh, I see. All right, sit down, sit down." So 5 minutes later, the other brother arrived, and he said, "Oh, you decided to come to school. Very nice to have you with us. And tell me, what kept you? You're late." I was having my breakfast. Let's see, and what did you have for your breakfast? I had a boiled egg. He said, your brother had a boiled egg. He could be here 5 minutes ago. Had I a spoon? Had I?
His delivery, and you could hear it there, and his ability to change voices and inflect his voice.
What a wonderful voice he had.
Superb.
Terrific instrument and a great ear.
A great ear. And effectively, looking back and doing a bit of research into this piece, a storyteller. And he encapsulated all that's great about drama, theatre, and just telling stories, like you do and like people do, just telling stories. Even that there, just a little nugget.
Beautiful gift for storytelling. He with the salvage shop, I mean, at the heart of it, this was, the man was a conductor of the local brass band. He was dying and he was foul-mouthed and obscene, but he had a wonderful big heart. And Niall told that story with such compassion, with such honesty, and with such rigour. He was a terrific craftsman. And really, and people tend to remember him as a sort of, for the one-man shows because they were so wonderful, but he was actually a great actor. His performance in the Bull McCabe that I was privileged to see was wonderful. We all remember him from Ballykissangel. And just speaking of Ballykissangel, I don't know if I have time, but when we were rehearsing the Salvage Shop, we rehearsed in the mental hospital, in the recreation hall of St. Otteran's. Yeah. And on the set, we had the set in the rehearsal room, and on the set was a bed. And Niall at lunchtime used to have a little nap in the bed. And I was there on my own one lunchtime, and one of the patients came through, and he looked up and he saw this guy in the bed, and he asked me what I was doing. I said, we were doing a play, and this was the actor. And he said, what's the play? And I told him, and he said, but that's not Sylvie Tansey was the name of the character. He said, that's Father Mac from Ballykissangel. And I said, well, actually it is. I said, but he's kind of playing a different role. No, that's Father Mac, he said. And then he left, and months later, I was talking to a nurse in the hospital, and she said that he left, this patient had left the recreation room, gone back to the ward, and was telling everybody that Father Mac was fast asleep in the recreation hall. And everybody was saying, yes, of course he is. They didn't believe him.
Jim, thanks so much for coming in. Congratulations on the Red Iron. Went to see it the other night and it's a great success. How are you feeling about it?
Very relieved. I'm very pleased. It was a local story with local voices, and it's great to hear it. We've had a wonderful reaction to it. It's almost sold out. And be careful about saying that because we have seats for sale still in the last week. But it's flying out the door, so I would encourage people to get onto Garter Lane as quickly as they can and to take up those remaining seats. It's been a great success, and I'm very grateful to everybody who helped us get there. Thank
Jim Nolan, thank you so much. And we're going to end this little piece now with Niall Tobin's story about the New York bar.
There were two men drinking in a New York bar, one at either end of this very, very long bar counter. And there was nobody else in the bar except the barman. And one guy squinted up along the length of the counter and said, you know what, there's some shocking Irish looks about you. I said, what's that effect? Well, you should get a prize for that. I have red hair and freckles and blue eyes and a broken nose, and you think I look Irish. Oh, Sherlock Holmes is alive and well and drinking in Manhattan. There's no need to be so bloody sarcastic. I know damn well you were Irish. What? I'm Irish myself, you know. Jeez, you don't say, you know. And what part of Ireland do you come from? It's none of your bloody business. No, come on, where are you? I come from Mayo. Come from Mayo? Jeez, I come from Mayo too. What part of Mayo do you come from? Culturemach, I suppose. Culturemach, me arse. I come from Castlebar. But jeez, I come from Castlebar too. What part of Castlebar do you come from? And just then the phone rang and the barman picked it up and said, oh, hi, boss. No, it's very quiet. Yeah, just the usual bullshit. The Rowan twins are pissed again.
A lot of texts and calls still coming through about the cycling issue. And also, Damien, can you ask Jim if he could write a play about Johns Park through the years and the mental hospital as we grew up playing around there? Jim has just left the studio, just like Elvis. But he'll be back and we will ask him that certainly. A lot more texts coming up in the next part of the show. But first, here's Emer with the news at 11. Emer.